Okay, it looks like the camera is once again not functional. But let's see if the screen share function works. All right. That is a strange result.
Not gonna see it.
You see the keynote?
That's what it looks like to me.
Ah, there we go. All right. All right, so a little disoriented here, but let's get back on track. So this is low-tech skills for high-tech achievement. And my goal with this is to think about the question of what are the actual activities in a manual and analog sort of way that we're trying to teach kids when they use apps. And I am a makerspace educator and spent a fair amount of time working as an art teacher. So I'm very visually oriented and also creativity oriented. And through teaching in the art room, I really was forced to deal with what am I actually asking the kids to look at, how do I describe it, and how do I teach them to execute different techniques, whether it be clay or a paintbrush. So why an analog to digital toolbox? Kids ask us really amazing questions like, what's the point of this? And it's really important, I feel, to have intelligent answers, and when we don't have answers, to struggle with them until we have better ones. So the question, so why, right? At this historical moment, obviously the digital world is here to stay. We know that for those of us who were born in a generation when the street lights coming on was what told us to head home, we had a bunch of experiences that folks today just generally don't have access to. Anyone who grew up on a farm 50 years ago would have not had Amazon as an option to get new parts for their tractor. They would know how to fabricate them themselves. So as a maker educator, I begin to wonder what skills are being totally lost that unless teachers record them now, what will they disappear? They will disappear, for, kind of forever. And that puts us in a position where we really have some important work to do because we are the last analog legacy generation who was present at the uptake of the digital world. Okay, so I was an art teacher and I also did some museum education. I'm a huge fan of objects, being able to record cultural information and capture ideas. And I think that Seymour Papert with constructivism, is the idea of taking your ideas and giving them form in the world. You're taking the models that all brains work with and you're giving them a tangible form so we can discuss them together. So that's sort of a background premise. Instead of taking a test to figure out what somebody understands, you have the students build, preferably in groups eventually, their models, build them physically so that you can analyze them and refine them, and the students can prove how they think things work. Now, obviously, that method doesn't work with everything. But for those that it does, the basic skills become really interesting. Okay, so this is up. If anybody wants to read it, you can certainly pause it in a replay. And I think that software really exists in education to put certain functions on rails. So the idea of being able to have a specific lesson, the software itself can be the structure that forces the kids to think about things and in ways that we as teachers want them to think. The problem solving in remote sensing or having a robot that can navigate itself, that kind of work within an app can structure their thinking and make them think in terms of logic and problem solving and those types of things. So in general, my background and then my experience as an art teacher and then going into makerspace work, here are what I think are the big priorities. Education of the senses, culture building on last year's learning, e-portfolios that affect the next generation of students, multiple intelligences, and that's partly just differentiation so that we tailor the education we're giving to individuals, and also, visual, audio, kinesthetic. It doesn't have to be rarefied and based on everything Howard Gardner said, just simply paying attention to how students like to process information. Here's some examples of what I mean. Okay, so what are these analog tools? So if you boil it down to the basic tools, a lot of the things we do on an iPad especially are visual. And the idea of making an icon or to have a branding or to have just visual messages that are sort of abstracted, they're not photographs, they're icon-based. The idea of a thumbnail sketch goes way back. In fact, 12,000 BCE, the Dead Man's Shaft in the Lascaux cave complex has probably one of the world's first cartoons, and it seems to send a message, something along the lines of, don't go hunting alone because a cave person is getting gored by a bull. So, I mean, there's a really long history to thumbnail sketches, and yet it's fundamentally the same brain activity to boil down an idea and demonstrate it. So, the idea of no poverty in the one here in the center, the red one, you show the family. And in a sense, adding families plural, with no poverty personalizes it. Zero hunger, the hot soup. Now, these are not total summaries, but it's a lot of information that you can unpack in a very small amount of screen real estate. All right, so thumbnail hacks. You can see in the bottom left-hand corner, this is part of a how-to. I'm making a shadow puppet theater, and I've moved on to the part where I show them how to make the characters and glue pieces together. In setting up the how-to, one photo can capture a ton of information, and quite often we ask kids to do things that are a lot more difficult than necessary, and just using the camera function to capture an idea and stage the information is a really good habit. As a teacher, I find myself struggling with how do I capture a lot of what I'm doing in just one or two photos, and the idea of a thumbnail sketch from the art history point of view is really powerful. And again, the extremely short composition time, you can do it in seconds if your kids are used to this as a routine. Here's a really fun one. If you want to get kids to get engaged in a lesson, starting with this kind of an idea, I was FaceTiming with my wife and put the phone on Chewbacca, and my son thought it was absolutely hysterical. And it's a really quick hack. It's a short lesson for, what kinds of toys can you use. You sort of assign it and have people bring in solutions the next day. But the thumbnail of this is the selling point. All right, storyboards. So there's nothing new about storyboards, but being able to do Post-its with an iPad really makes things quick. Oh, the video did not play on that. The right-hand side there with the enjoy your sand, when you push play, the sandwich link, you see the letters get spelled out as I take photos peeling each Post-it note back, and it basically animates an entire app where you have somebody bring a sandwich to you. So I'll have to post that link later. Loops and samples. The idea of learning music through mashups where you take drum loops and different types of instruments, that goes way back to the first wax recordings. And obviously, it's much more usable with Makey Makey. You plug it into Scratch, and you can use these different nodes to activate a song. These students here, whenever they touch the pad that's got the little piece of cardboard right above the laptop, if they touch that and any of the other silver parts at the end of the tape, it plays a different sample. So one will do a drum beat and the rest, and I'm thinking the media probably won't play on this slide either. So that's why I'm describing it. The trick of it is, though, they all have to link up and join hands because the Makey Makey only triggers when you close the circuit. So it's a collaborative music playing game, and you can talk about different types of music. But this can be used for narratives as well. You can record stories in chunks and have the story play in different orders. Choose your own adventure through a Makey Makey. But this idea of, lots of software uses loops and samples, but we as teachers don't always think of it as a way that we can have kids think about sequence. If you have a story or maybe even just a 5-paragraph essay and you push the buttons in a different order, you get a very different outcome as a piece. And as an English teacher, if you were to use this technology this way, you could really have kids understand and create theories about why certain things have to be in certain order. English teachers, when I say, well, kids always want to argue, or there's always someone who wants to argue that the thesis statement shouldn't necessarily be the first sentence, this could show why. And you could do an exercise where they all experiment with it, and we'll, find out during the class what the real issues are and aren't. All right, so cut and paste, visual layouts of information that are collaborative like this one can be incredibly powerful. The entire class had access to this Prezi, and this was an image used to collect ideas for biomimicry design thinking projects. And it allowed the teachers to post the design process and their ideas of what needed to be in things, as well as some issues and a hyperlink to the rubric and so on. But the kids could see what each other were doing, and they could give feedback to that. So the idea of cut and paste that our parents' generation's mind was blown by. And I remember my writing professors in college in the 90s were just astonished by what it did to their composition abilities. One poet in particular said it's really transformed the way that I write, and this was a Ohio Poet Laureate. So it really, it changed the way that people thought. And it's important to remember that the cut and paste gesture is the foundation for some of these really complicated technologies. And that if you let the kids think about what is cut and paste, it breaks things down so that they understand the basic function, that they're adding one thing, moving something from one spot and changing the context. And one of the reasons why I think that's so important is that if we can talk about meaning of visual objects next to each other and how it changes what we understand, we can teach students to think really abstractly about what they're trying to do, but get really concrete results. Okay, onion skin. Using different layers. I'm a huge fan of visual apps that allow you to go through a creative process by working in layers. You take a photograph of what is, and you add a layer, and you can draw a sketch of what you want to create. And then you can turn off the original layer and redesign the drawing that's on top of it, leaving a fully functional final product that was based on a photograph, and it happens so much faster. And it's no different than the little walking gesture guy who's up in the top right corner there. you're just adding layer upon layer until you are creating something of meaning. And that's the same with an animated piece as it is with designing a three-dimensional object. An amazing way to use just that basic idea of incremental improvements layer by layer, or incremental changes layer by layer, so that the onion skin concept with an iPad or Photoshop or in any number of applications from the animation world, you can incrementally hack. You can use an animation program to design or a design program to animate. So to remember what the basic gesture of the skill that you're asking the kids to work with can allow you to see how to hack things so that you can say, if only I could do this. Well, quite often it is possible. You just have to think of it from the basic gestures. So here's what I was describing. Top left is the original tank that's going to become an aquaponics tank. You go down and you see I've got two layers open. One is where I'm drawing the fish and the water and the plants, and then I remove the original photo there on the right-hand side, and you see where you've just got the design for the aquaponics tank and what needs to happen. Okay, so this is not interactive because of the camera problem and the technical issues, so not going to do any of these activities or discussion, but I wanted to make sure that even though we had major technical problems, i.e. the camera wouldn't work, and by the time I figured out that I could at least screen share, kind of fried, but just wanted to make sure that it at least got done. And thank you for watching, and have a fantastic day.